Hello brothers and welcome to Sigma Old Man channel. Never assume silence means nothing is happening. Sometimes it's the busiest battlefield of all. While most people wear their thoughts like cheap cologne, loud, obvious and impossible to ignore, the Sigma male's mind works in stealth mode. Studies show that the human brain generates over 6,000 thoughts a day, but here's the catch. A Sigma doesn't waste his on noise. He refines, filters and sharpens them until what's left is a private arsenal of insight, calculation and escape routes. When you're not looking, his brain isn't idle, it's quietly dissecting every interaction, rerunning past conversations like secret tapes and drafting blueprints for futures you don't even know he's considering. To the outside world, he may look like he's just spacing out. In reality, he's running mental simulations that could rival a supercomputer. And the funniest part? You might think you've outsmarted him in real time, but long after you've stopped thinking about it, his brain is still playing the long game while sipping coffee like nothing ever happened. This isn't just how Sigma males think. It's how they dominate the invisible battlefield no one else even knows exists. Number one, they're constantly measuring cost versus freedom. A Sigma male's brain never stops running the numbers on one thing, cost versus freedom. It's not money he's calculating, it's the invisible price tag attached to every choice, every relationship, every promise, every yes and every no. While most people chase opportunities blindly or cling to bonds because they're scared of letting go, a Sigma is busy scanning for the hidden strings attached. He knows everything comes with a trade-off, and he's not willing to hand over his autonomy just to keep others comfortable. When someone offers him a position, an alliance, or even love, he doesn't just ask, "What do I gain?" His instinct is to ask, "What freedom will I lose if I say yes?" That's why his decisions often look cold from the outside. Where others see opportunity, he sees potential shackles. To him, accepting comfort at the cost of independence is the same as walking into a prison with silk sheets. It's still a cage. This constant weighing makes him unpredictable because people expect gratitude or loyalty just for offering something shiny. They're baffled when he walks away from great opportunities or steps out of relationships that seem perfect. What they don't understand is that the deal didn't pass his internal test. Maybe the salary looked nice, but the time commitment was suffocating. Maybe the relationship offered affection, but came with subtle demands to bend. To him, the loss of freedom is always more expensive than the gain. It also explains why he's so hard to manipulate. Most people can be pressured with guilt, approval, or reward. But his brain has already devalued all of that if it threatens his autonomy. You can't bait him with promises because he's already measured the hook attached to them. And you can't guilt him into compliance because he sees guilt itself as a control tactic that costs more than it gives. That's why being around a Sigma can feel unsettling. You realize quickly that nothing owns him, not money, not status, not even people. His mind is always balancing the equation, and the result is simple. Freedom will always outweigh every other currency. For him, that's not negotiable, that's survival. Number two, they're secretly practicing cold withdrawal. Their secretly practicing cold withdrawal isn't about cruelty, it's about control. A Sigma male's mind is wired to keep the upper hand in every connection by never letting himself depend too much. While most people throw themselves into relationships headfirst and worry about the consequences later, a Sigma is already rehearsing the exit before the bond even deepens. He doesn't do this because he's heartless. He does it because he knows attachment can be the fastest way to lose his freedom. So even when he's laughing with you, sharing moments, or showing what looks like vulnerability, another part of his brain is quietly running a silent drill. If I cut this off tomorrow, how would you react? Would you collapse? Would you fight? Would you even notice? He studies those possibilities like a scientist observing an experiment. For him, cold withdrawal isn't just a last resort. It's a permanent option that's always on the table. This mental rehearsal makes him terrifying to people who rely on attachment as leverage. They realize they can't lock him in with love, with guilt, or even with loyalty. Because he's already tested the feeling of walking away in his head, the act itself becomes easier if the day ever comes. He doesn't collapse from the emotional weight of leaving because he's already lifted it in private, over and over again. That's why people often describe a Sigma's disappearance as sudden, shocking, or brutal. But the truth is, it wasn't sudden to him. He'd been preparing for it long before you ever saw it coming. To him, withdrawal is never panic, it's strategy. He knows the world belongs to those who can detach when others cling. And here's the unsettling part. You never really know when he's running the drill. He could be fully invested, or he could just be testing how replaceable you are. Either way, his silence and distance aren't accidents. They're rehearsals. And when the time comes, his ability to vanish without hesitation is what keeps him untouchable. Number 3, they view affection as a possible distraction. They view affection as a possible distraction because their brains are trained to spot the invisible strings that often come attached to closeness. Most people melt under the warmth of intimacy, letting it soften their judgment and blur their boundaries. A Sigma doesn't. Even in moments that should feel purely emotional, his mind is busy scanning for what lies beneath. He asks himself whether this tenderness is genuine connection, or whether it's a carefully wrapped package meant to redirect his attention, slow him down, or tether him in ways he hasn't agreed to. This doesn't mean he's incapable of affection or allergic to love. It means he doesn't romanticize it blindly. He's seen too many people fall into traps disguised as devotion. Partners who use affection as leverage, friends who weaponize loyalty, families who suffocate under the banner of care. To him, love can be real, but it can also be the most seductive form of control. His guard never fully drops because he refuses to be blinded by what feels good in the moment. When someone embraces him, showers him with attention, or offers emotional closeness, he runs a mental check. Does this empower me or demand something from me? Does this connection sharpen my freedom or dull it? If the balance leans toward manipulation, even subtly, his instinct is to pull back, not lean in. He knows that once affection becomes obligation, it's no longer intimacy, it's a leash. This makes relationships with him feel different. Some people find it frustrating because they can't sway him with sweetness or seduce him into submission. Others find it magnetic because his affection, when he does give it, feels rare, deliberate, and untamed by expectation. He doesn't confuse attention with love, and he doesn't reward affection that comes with hidden costs. That's the Sigma paradox. The more affection is pushed on him as a weapon, the colder he becomes. But when affection is given without control, without agenda, and without trying to reshape him, he values it more than most people ever could. Because for him, real intimacy isn't about losing focus. It's about finding someone who doesn't try to take it away. Number 4, they build invisible rules for themselves. They build invisible rules for themselves, and those rules are the unseen architecture of their lives. Unlike most people who operate on socially agreed guidelines, morality, religion, law, or peer approval, a Sigma male constructs a private system that only he understands. These aren't moral codes designed to look righteous or to win applause. They are personal laws, self-forged through experience, pain, victories, and betrayals. You won't see them written down, you won't hear him explain them, and you'll never get a handbook. But if you watch closely, you'll notice there's a rhythm to his decisions. A consistency that doesn't bend no matter what the world demands. The invisible rules might seem strange from the outside. He might refuse opportunities everyone else would die for, or cut ties with people others think are worth keeping. But to him, these moves are non-negotiable. The rules exist to protect his freedom, his clarity, and his sense of self. And here's the unnerving part. He will break your expectations before he breaks his own code. Because these rules are unseen, people often misinterpret his choices. They call him stubborn, cold, or difficult, when really he's simply living by laws they cannot access. If his rule says never beg for what can't be earned, then no matter how much pressure you put on him, he won't chase validation. If his code insists, walk away the second trust is broken, then it doesn't matter if history, family, or romance is at stake. He's already gone in his head. What makes this terrifying for others is the fact that you can't negotiate with these rules. They aren't flexible and they aren't up for debate. You can't argue him into betraying his code, and you can't bribe him to bend it. To him, breaking his own laws would be the ultimate form of self-betrayal, and that's something he refuses to live with. The paradox is that his invisible rules make him both unpredictable and utterly dependable. You can't predict exactly what they are, but once you learn the outlines, you'll see he never strays. While the rest of the world bends under pressure, his private code keeps him untouchable, and that's what makes him impossible to fully control. Number 5, They're collecting evidence of who you are when you think no one notices. They're collecting evidence of who you are when you think no one notices. And this is one of the most unnerving things about how a Sigma male's mind works. While most people take interactions at face value, he treats every moment like a case file. A small slip in your tone, a hesitation before you answer, a contradiction between what you said last week and what you're saying now, these don't just pass by him. His brain logs them silently like stamps on a hidden ledger. The unsettling part is that you'll never know when he's taking notes. He doesn't react when he notices the inconsistency. He doesn't confront you, and he doesn't call you out in the moment. That's what makes people underestimate him. They assume silence means ignorance, but in reality it's documentation. He lets you believe you've gotten away with something, while in his head the evidence stacks higher and higher. Over time, these tiny observations form a complete portrait of who you really are, not who you pretend to be when the spotlight is on you. He learns your triggers, your contradictions, your strengths, and your weaknesses. By the time everyone else realizes your mask is slipping, he already knows the entire story underneath it. And if the day comes when you cross him, he won't explode or cause a scene. He'll quietly lay the weight of all that hidden evidence on the table without mercy. This habit isn't born from paranoia, but from survival. A Sigma male knows that people reveal themselves in fragments, not declarations. Words are cheap, but patterns are priceless. He'd rather wait for the truth to leak out in small cracks than accept the polished image you try to sell him. That's why betrayal rarely shocks him. He's already seen the signs months before it happens. The scariest part? Most people only realize he's been collecting evidence when it's too late. By then, the mask is already shattered, and he's holding the full record of the person you didn't want anyone to see. To him, that's not cruelty, it's clarity. He doesn't expose you to punish you. He simply refuses to live in your illusion. Number 6, they audit every interaction like a chess player. They audit every interaction like a chess player because to them, conversations are never just words, they're moves on a board. While most people walk away from an exchange and let it fade into the background, a Sigma male's brain refuses to let it end there. Once the talking stops, the analysis begins. He replays the dialogue in his head, not out of insecurity or obsession, but to strip it down to the bones and see what was really happening beneath the surface. Every pause, every change in tone, every misplaced smile becomes a data point. He asks himself why you phrased something the way you did, why you emphasized one detail but skipped another, why your body language betrayed nervousness when your words didn't. To most, it's nothing. To him, it's a pattern, a tell, a subtle shift in strategy that reveals more about you than you ever intended. This mental audit makes him seem like he's always one step ahead because in a way he is. Where others only remember what was said, he remembers how it was said, when it was said, and what wasn't said at all. He treats silence as much of a statement as speech, and once he's done dissecting it, the entire interaction looks different in his head than it did in real time. That's why people often feel unsettled around him, because he catches things they thought slipped under the radar. It's not about mistrust, it's about accuracy. A Sigma male doesn't like to act on assumptions, so he uses this post-game analysis to confirm whether someone's words align with their intentions. If the pieces don't fit, he files it away, ready for when the truth eventually reveals itself. This is why manipulation rarely works on him. By the time someone thinks they've played him, he's already mapped the cracks in their strategy. To outsiders, this might look exhausting, but to him, it's second nature. His brain doesn't allow loose ends, it seeks clarity in the hidden details. And just like a chess master, he knows every small move matters because sooner or later the board will reveal who's really in control. Number 7, they're running simulations of escape routes. They're running simulations of escape routes not because they're paranoid, but because their minds are hardwired to protect freedom above all else. While most people walk into situations assuming permanence, jobs they'll keep forever, relationships that should last, routines that feel safe, a Sigma male never surrenders to that illusion. His brain treats every circumstance as temporary, every connection as conditional, and every environment as something he might one day need to walk away from without warning. Even in the most ordinary settings, his thoughts are quietly testing the exits. Sitting in a meeting, he's not just listening to the words being spoken, he's calculating how quickly he could walk out and never look back. Spending time with someone, he's not only enjoying the moment, he's rehearsing what would happen if he disappeared tomorrow. Would they crumble? Would they move on? Would it cost him too much? These silent simulations aren't dramatic, they're strategy. They keep him light, mobile, and untethered in a world that constantly tries to pin people down. The unsettling part is that these escape rehearsals make him immune to the traps others fall into, where most people get stuck because they've invested too much, too deeply, too blindly. A Sigma male already knows how to cut ties. He doesn't confuse comfort with permanence, and he doesn't rely on external anchors to give him stability. Because he's practiced withdrawal in his mind 100 times, the actual act of leaving never feels like chaos. It feels like execution of a plan he's already tested. This mental habit also gives him an edge over manipulation. Control only works when someone is scared to lose what they have. But when a Sigma has already rehearsed life without you, without the job, without the circle, your leverage disappears. That's why attempts to corner him almost always backfire. You can't trap someone who's already imagined and prepared for themselves walking away. It might sound cold, but to him this isn't negativity, it's insurance. He isn't fantasizing about burning bridges, he's simply refusing to let any bridge become the only way across. That constant rehearsal of freedom ensures that no matter where he stands, he's never truly stuck. And in a world where most people are enslaved by their attachments, that makes him untouchable. Number 8. They diagnose the room's energy in silence. They diagnose the room's energy in silence because their brain is wired to notice what most people overlook. While everyone else is busy talking, laughing, or trying to be noticed, a Sigma male sits quietly, absorbing the unspoken language in the air. People mistake his stillness for distraction, as if he's zoning out, but in reality he's conducting a full scan of the room. Every glance, every tone of voice, every subtle gesture is logged and weighed. He isn't just hearing words, he's mapping the invisible web of power, tension, and unspoken alliances that define the space. It's almost surgical the way he does it. Who avoids eye contact with whom? Who interrupts and who submits? Who laughs a little too loudly at a certain person's joke and who forces a smile out of obligation? To most, these things are invisible. To him, they're the outlines of hidden hierarchies. By the time the conversation has ended, he already knows who really holds influence, who secretly resents it, and who's pretending to be neutral while quietly picking sides. This diagnostic habit gives him an uncanny ability to move through environments without drawing fire. Because he already knows where the invisible landmines are, he rarely steps on them. He knows who not to trust, who is safe to ignore, and who needs to be managed with precision. What looks like intuition is actually data collection happening in silence. It also means he's almost never blindsided by social politics. While others get caught in conflicts they didn't see coming, he's been watching the storm gather long before the lightning struck. And when it does, he already knows who will stand where once the dust settles. That's why people are unsettled by him, because he doesn't just play the game, he reads the board while everyone else is still shuffling their pieces. His silence isn't absence, it's surveillance. The very moment you think he's disengaged, he's seeing you more clearly than you see yourself. And when the time comes, his ability to move with surgical accuracy in a web of hidden dynamics is what makes him appear almost untouchable. Number 9. They convert loneliness into blueprints. They convert loneliness into blueprints because their minds don't register solitude the way most people's do. For the average person, being alone feels like a void, an emptiness that must be filled with noise, distraction, or company. For a Sigma male, that same silence is raw material. His brain treats it as space to build, to reimagine, to draft strategies that will one day look like sudden success to those who assumed he was idle. This is why outsiders constantly misjudge him. They see his absence from crowds, his avoidance of constant socializing, or his preference for retreating into his own world as signs of isolation. They pity him, assuming he's missing out. What they never realize is that his quiet moments are his most productive ones. While others are draining their energy, keeping up appearances, he's busy constructing the future in invisible detail. In his solitude, he sketches solutions to problems no one else even sees coming. He outlines escape routes, personal reinventions, business ideas, or lifestyle shifts, and then he lets those ideas mature in silence. By the time he finally acts, it looks effortless, as though he's suddenly appeared with a master plan. But the truth is that plan was born in the long hours of solitude that others would have wasted fighting off boredom. What makes this so powerful is that his relationship with loneliness is inverted. Where most people run from it, he leans into it. Where others crumble, he thrives. Loneliness doesn't drain him, it sharpens him. It forces his brain to work differently, to pull brilliance out of silence and to design realities no one thought he was capable of creating. That's why he often surprises those around him. They thought he was doing nothing, but he was quietly laying down blueprints that will later shift the ground beneath their feet. For him, being alone is never about absence. It's about construction. The silence others fear becomes the workshop of his mind, and the stillness others avoid becomes the foundation of his next breakthrough. And that's why underestimating his solitude is always a mistake, because while you're dismissing it, he's using it to build the very advantage you'll never see coming. Number 10, they run fake conversations to test people's reactions. They run fake conversations in their heads because their minds are always preparing for angles others don't even consider. While most people replay past arguments or fantasize about what they should have said, a Sigma male's brain is doing something more tactical. He stages hypothetical dialogues in silence, not to comfort himself, but to study. He plays out what you might say if he challenged you, what excuse you'd give if confronted, how you'd react if he suddenly pulled away or pushed harder. These simulations aren't daydreams, they're rehearsals. It's almost like espionage, but carried out entirely in the mind. By running these fake conversations, he can predict where you're weak, where you'd contradict yourself, and where you'd fold under pressure. He tests whether you'd betray yourself with too much honesty or whether you'd scramble for control when cornered. That way, by the time the real moment comes, he already knows the most likely script you'll follow. To you, it might feel like he's reading your mind. In reality, he's just rehearsed the possibilities long before you stepped onto the stage. This mental habit gives him a strange advantage in relationships, friendships, and even professional settings. People are used to improvising, to thinking they're in control of their own words. But with a Sigma, he's already walked through those words in his head, already prepared counters, already weighed your possible outcomes. It makes him frustratingly difficult to manipulate because you're never surprising him, you're only confirming what he already predicted. The unsettling part is that you rarely realize when you've stepped into one of these mental tests. A question he asked casually might have been planted weeks ago in a simulated conversation he'd been running. Your answer doesn't just satisfy curiosity, it tells him if you match the version of you he already imagined, or if you've exposed a flaw you didn't mean to show. This is why interacting with a Sigma can feel like playing a game without knowing the rules. You think it's a normal exchange, but for him it's a rehearsal unfolding in real time. And the scariest truth? He's probably already run the next conversation in his head before you've even walked away from the current one. Number 11, they see betrayal before it happens. They see betrayal before it happens, not because they're paranoid or mystical, but because their brains are wired to track micro-patterns most people dismiss. A Sigma male doesn't just listen to what you say, he absorbs how you say it, when you say it, and what you don't say at all. Over time, he builds a mental record of your consistency, or your lack of it. That's why when betrayal finally surfaces, it rarely surprises him. The warning signs have been echoing long before the knife is visible. It could be something as small as a hesitation before answering, a delay in returning a message, or a subtle change in how warmly you greet him. To most, those details are meaningless. To him, they're signals. He logs them without reacting, connecting dots silently until the bigger picture reveals itself. By the time you've convinced yourself you've hidden your intentions, he already knows. What makes this unsettling is that he doesn't confront betrayal when he first senses it. He lets it breathe, lets you keep weaving the thread, lets the evidence stack. While you're busy thinking you're clever, he's quietly preparing his next move. That's why when he finally withdraws, it feels cold and sudden to the betrayer. But in truth, it wasn't sudden at all. He saw it coming, tracked it, and simply waited for the right moment to cut the cord clean. This ability isn't born from cynicism, it's survival. He knows loyalty is fragile, and he refuses to be caught off guard by those who crack under pressure or temptation. Where others get blindsided and wonder how they missed the signs, his brain doesn't allow that luxury. He'd rather spot the fracture early than be left bleeding from the fallout later. That's why people often describe him as hard to fool. It's not that he's impossible to deceive, it's that he won't ignore the subtle shifts that expose deception. Betrayal never arrives without warning, and he's trained himself to hear those warnings long before they become undeniable. By the time the world sees the stab, he's already stepped out of reach. Number 12, they're secretly ranking everyone's authenticity. They're secretly ranking everyone's authenticity, and it's not a conscious checklist, it's a reflex wired deep into their thinking. While most people accept interactions at face value, a Sigma male's brain automatically begins grading them, not on charm or intelligence, but on truth. Every laugh, every compliment, every offhand remark gets scanned for sincerity. Was that laugh genuine or forced? Was that kindness spontaneous, or was it rehearsed to earn favor? Even the smallest gestures get weighed against an internal scale, and most people fail without ever realizing why. This is why he can seem distant or unimpressed in rooms where everyone else is dazzled. He's not swept up by charisma or performance because his brain filters past the glitter to test for substance. Someone can be wildly popular, socially powerful, or dripping with confidence, yet if their words and actions don't align, they instantly slide down his scale. Meanwhile, a quiet person who speaks only when they mean it can rank higher than the loudest voice in the room. The unsettling part is that you can't trick the scale. It doesn't respond to effort, image, or manipulation. In fact, the harder someone tries to appear authentic, the quicker the Sigma notices the cracks. He isn't looking for perfection, he's looking for congruence. Do your actions match your words? Does your face betray emotions your tone tries to hide? Do you act the same when no one's watching as you do in the spotlight? Every interaction answers those questions, whether you realize it or not. And because this ranking happens subconsciously, his reactions are instinctive. He doesn't announce his judgments or call people out. He simply adjusts how much access he gives. High scorers on his authenticity scale are rare, and they earn a loyalty from him that's almost unshakable. Low scorers, on the other hand, may never understand why he keeps them at arm's length, why his trust feels impossible to secure, or why he disappears without explanation. To the Sigma, this isn't cynicism, it's clarity. Authenticity is currency, and most people are broke. His brain knows it, even if his face never shows it. And that's why when he finally chooses someone to let in, it feels like a rare privilege rather than a casual choice. Every layer of the Sigma male's mind operates in silence, yet nothing about it is passive. When you strip it down, what looks like detachment is actually deep calculation. What appears as absence is really surveillance. And what most people mistake for idleness is in fact the groundwork of strategies, blueprints, and exits no one else even thought to consider. His brain doesn't waste time on noise, it filters, measures, and stockpiles until truth becomes undeniable. That's why betrayal doesn't shock him, affection doesn't blind him, and solitude doesn't weaken him. He doesn't just live in the present moment. He's constantly mapping the unseen currents, shaping the future. And that's the paradox. The quieter he seems, the more dangerous his awareness becomes. Every interaction is logged, every mask is tested, and every possibility is rehearsed long before it arrives. The world underestimates him because it sees only what he chooses to show. But behind the calm exterior, his mind is always running the invisible game, and he rarely loses. If this deep dive into how Sigma males' brains really work left you intrigued, then it's time to take the next step. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss the kind of insights that others won't tell you. Like this video, drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't keep this knowledge to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Every click, every comment, every share fuels the fire and keeps this community growing stronger. Stay sharp, stay aware, and I'll see you in the next one.